me know the mission of Neone?
I'm Dave. I'm the CEO of Neone, and we build a private web for small groups and organizations. And the reason we do that is obviously privacy is important, but what's more important is to have the freedom to have honest conversations with each other. We've all got to the point where we're watched and monitored at all times, and it affects how we communicate with each other and whether or not the best ideas are allowed to flourish. So that's our mission.
And how do you think that, what are some functionalities that users can do with Neone?
The great thing we like to say about Neone is it's not what we do, it's how we do it. So when you open our app, you're going to instantly kind of know how to use it. It has a social media feed, it has a Dropbox-like functionality, it has chat, and then soon enough it will have calls as well. But the way we do it is we package all of those services into a private web for just your group that no one else can access. It's encrypted in transit and it's encrypted at rest, and we will not crack open that encryption until we get a warrant.
Amazing. And what has your founder journey been like? How long have you had this company, and how did you decide to pursue this vision?
Interestingly enough, I got my start in tech by working in recording studios here in Austin, and I was the young guy back in the day that had to get digital working on Mac OS 8, and then I was the guy that had to build websites for bands, and because of that I got a lot of experience and learned that if you weren't the owner of your own server, you had no privacy, you only had a promise from me. And that really struck me. And in the early 2000s, when bands and video producers were getting hacked a lot, there was a lot of concern about how to transfer the work we were doing in the studio to others. And my thought process was, well, if each of us had a server, this would be a lot easier. So, and that was 10 years ago. So I've been working on this quite a while. We had a hardware version of this, and we learned a lot. We got some great patents out of it. But now we're taking a virtual approach based on Kubernetes, and instead of having a hardware server, you have a virtual hub, is what we like to call it.
Amazing. And your company seems to be all about privacy and not stealing data like other social media companies do. And so why are you passionate about that issue?
Again, this goes back to my roots as a political activist and as an artist, that we need ways to communicate where we're not watching what we say, that we can be ourselves. No one wanted the surveillance capitalism to take over. We loved connecting with our friends, but all of a sudden every aspect of our life was being sifted through and sorted and sold to the highest bidder, and we've seen what that's done to society. So I have wanted to create something that didn't rely on advertisers' dollars, that was paid for by the people using it. It's kind of an odd approach. It's like, let's provide a service that people pay us for and we make a profit off of, and that's how it works. You know, no advertisers and data mining involved.
Amazing. And what is your vision for the future of your company, and what would the world look like if everyone adopted your social media platform?
Well, you know, it's funny. I learned a lesson when I built my first recording studio. There was only so many hours in the day and only so much money you could make charging, and I always wanted something that would scale. And the thing I love about our business is, even though we're aiming for small groups and organizations, it is designed to scale all the way to the enterprise. I would love to see the world adopt this. It would create a safer way for us to share and communicate. It would cut down on the manipulation we have through data mining and tracking, and I think it would solve some of the problems that we have right now with social platforms.
I'm curious so you've been building this for 10 years, and I'm curious how has been your experience watching the social media industry grow into, utilizing people's data in a non-transparent way, and how you think about privacy versus transparency?
Again, because of my experience being a server admin, I was skeptical of these online services from the beginning that were, quote, free, because how were they paying? We have an expression, who pays for the servers, right? And people wanted the free product, and why wouldn't they? It connected us to our friends, it connected us to people we hadn't get to talk. There's a lot of really good things about social media, but no one knew what they were exactly signing up for at the time. And I think that's something that we need to address. Forgot the second part of your question.
Yeah, the dilemma that these social media companies put forward in terms of, oh, privacy is against transparency, though with
There-
blockchain we see that that's not necessarily the case.
This may not directly answer your question, but I think that what most people get wrong is there's a difference between privacy and anonymity, right? And we're trying to straddle that line. We like to say we're trying to build a better web, not a dark web, right? And the way we're going to do that is respond to warrants with whatever country you're hosted in. And that's the legal system we live in the real world, and that's the one we're trying to recreate in the virtual world. So transparency is another way of saying accountability, right? And people get very up in arms about free speech and these types of things, but there's also accountability for what you say. And I think we've seen the dangers of letting people post and say whatever they want to anonymously without any sort of transparency as to what's going on.
And I'm curious how you're thinking about basically how you ensure privacy. Because you mentioned before our interview that Web3 and blockchain, that is a way to do it, but that's not necessarily the way you're using.
Oh, that's right. So the way to think about this is, and this is true, you've often heard that you can't build a backdoor into encryption without breaking it, and that is true. And I agree with that statement. However, given the software platform that we're using is based in the cloud and we control it, what we're building is an intelligence into your space that will respond to a valid request for your encryption keys. And what I mean by that is there are forms of blockchains that are based on Ethereum that are contract-based. And we're building into each space a contract that says if Neone gets a legal warrant and Neone Legal and myself approve it with our encryption keys, only at that point will your space send our legal department your keys. Now, that does not give you the same level of protection as Signal or Telegram, but we're not trying to fill that space. I like to say that there's three forms of surveillance we face in the modern world. Corporate surveillance, which is like Facebook and Google, mass government surveillance, where they're watching everybody, and targeted government surveillance. We're trying to help you protect you from the first two. The last one is a complicated subject, and there are other solutions for that, but there's a bigger need that needs to be filled, and that's what we're going to be filling.
Do you have a call to action to perhaps Web3 communities? Because Web3 communities are also very interested in this idea and are looking for different ways of social media, because they mainly come together in Discord, Twitter, which are Web2 companies. So do you have any invite for them, any call to action?
I do, I actually do. The funny thing is we didn't set out to be a Web3 company, however we built a perfect platform for Web3. If you think about it, what do people on a blockchain need? They need to store their data. If you're storing your information on somebody else's blockchain, it's not your data, right? So the only way you're going to be in control of your own data is to control where it's stored, and that's what we're offering you. People talk a lot about blockchains, and I think that it reminds me of the early days of the web when they say when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? I think blockchain is really amazing for certain things, for authentication, for financial transactions. I don't think you should be basing social networks off of it. I mean, you'll run out of storage space in 2 days, right? People don't think these things through. But blockchain is an incredible tool. It really is. And I think if you, in the United States, we have a system called checks and balances, right? When it comes to applying warrants and these types of things. And we're trying to take that same approach where it's not an either or picture, right? Where if we are presented with a legal reason to crack open your space, we're going to do it. Otherwise, we're going to protect you.
Okay, and how can people join your social network and be a part of your community?
We're going to be releasing this summer to the public, and right now, if you have a group or organization that wants to test, just go to neone.com and send us an email, and we'll be happy to get you on the test list.
Thank you so much. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. No, that was amazing. This was a great conversation.
Wonderful.
Is there anything else that you would like to share that we didn't cover?
No, I think y'all did a great job, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
so much.
You bet. Cheers.